Hey everyone, David here from the Five and Dime, and Beauregard's surgery was a success. His makeover is now complete, so I'm going to show you the steps that it took to get him from broken to beautiful. So we're going to start off with some glue. So I had to use some E6000 in order to get him reattached, and keeping in mind that there were a lot of missing pieces. So the backstory on Beauregard is basically Beauregard has been more or less my mascot for my business since almost from the very beginning of when I started painting furniture. And I broke him. So I've already broke him once, fixed him, and this time broke him and smashed his face and tail off. So it was time for an update, and unfortunately just a little bit of glue was going to work this time. So the E6000 was partially dried. I taped it off to hold everything in place, and now I'm using actually my hot glue gun, and you can see there's a large chunk that's missing, and unfortunately that piece was broken into many pieces and was not able to be repaired. So I'm actually filling up that cavity and his tail with the hot glue. The hot glue served two purposes. It strengthened his tail to ensure that it wouldn't break off again, but it also filled in that gap really well. So all I did was I came in and I used it, filling in the hole, let it cool a little bit, add some more. Let it cool a bit, add a little bit more. So I was building layers inside that cavity, and then using my finger, which I wet, I smoothed out the hot glue to make it as smooth as possible. I was really happy with how this turned out, and as you can see, it's not too shabby. I mean, it's not going to be perfect, but I mean, sometimes surgery isn't perfect. So he's all done, and look at that. Not too bad, but like you can see how much hot glue was used in there because there was that much of a gap. So on to the next steps. I wanted to make sure that he was completely dry before I did anything else, so I let him dry overnight. And the next day I came in and using 100 grit sandpaper, I tried sanding down a couple of the rough spots. It worked okay-ish. Not gonna lie, probably could have done a little better job with the glue when I was initially putting it in, but it's okay. It's really not gonna be that bad and it won't be that noticeable. It's better than a missing tail. Beauregard is made of glass, so I am using Slick Stick. I'm going to be painting this, and I didn't know how paint would adhere to the glue, so better safe than sorry. Slick Stick it is. So I gave it a coat of Slick Stick, let it dry a few hours, gave it a second coat of Slick Stick, and I'll let it dry overnight before moving on to the next steps. So Beauregard is now getting a very bold makeover. And to start this transition, we're going to be moving in with Caviar. So Caviar is the truest black from the Dixie Belle Paint Company's chalk mineral paint line. And he'll get a complete coat on that. And it's not about perfection in the first coat. So he'll get the first coat, we'll let it dry, and then we'll move on to the next steps. So remember I said I wanted bold. So I am using the copper patina over top of the Caviar. And I find that Caviar as a base before putting your copper down really lends to having a richer color than just putting the copper on top of the white or by itself. I'll stipple this all over and then we'll be ready to move on to the next step because of course there is more. You absolutely want to make sure between each step that it's dry before moving to the next step, all right? That's very important. So now, this is where the bold comes in. We're actually applying crackle. So just using a smaller brush, I'm going to apply the crackle, and I'm trying to get it really thin. I don't want large chunks. And the trick with crackle is the thicker you apply it, the larger the cracks. The smaller you apply it, the thinner the cracks. And let's face it, Beauregard has enough cracks already. Even though they've been repaired, I'm going to mask that with a crackle. One of the key things to ensuring you have a good crackle is making sure you allow your base of crackle to dry completely before moving on to adding your paint. So I'm coming back with Caviar again to create my top coat. So I'm using a small artist brush from the Dixie Belle Paint Company's artist brush line, and I am just applying the Caviar on top. and making sure that I'm brushing in one direction. You don't want any back brushing because you'll ruin your crackle. So just using the artist brush, especially on a small piece like this, worked really, really well. I have to say, I'm really happy with how Beauregard turned out. I think he's bold and beautiful now and will resume his duties as part of my staging team. And thank you for joining along on this journey. Thank you all for the thoughts and prayers for a speedy recovery. Ciao for now.